I'm sure you all have watched the race day broadcast. All qualified cars are lined up. They're waiting for that green signal to take off. But you will still see the engineer, not one, many gathered around their cars, leaning into it, trying to make those last-minute adjustments. A photographer is usually like that racing car driver. The difference is he's also the technician who has to fine-tune his machine every time he sets out on a shoot, which usually is a race. Setting your camera optimally to get the best result is very, very critical. Here, I am not really talking about the photography skills. I am talking about the in-camera setting, preparing the camera so that it gives you a very good quality result. So, if you are struggling with camera settings, pick up your camera. Let's go one by one through a few recommendations that we have. Let's get our racing machine ready for a race day. Well, like I said, it's not about photography skills. It's about how to set, how to prepare your machine for that day. For the demonstration, I'm using a Nikkon D810 and let's go through the menu. Okay, press the menu. Of course, you will get the menu right in front. So the first one is called the playback menu. The playback menu has nothing to do with the actual shooting itself. It just lets you play or review your image in a certain way. You can decide to see or not see your shooting information, your metadata on your screen. And the most important one is in the next menu. It's called the shooting menu. Now, the other camera brands will be calling this menu in different ways. So please refer to it. But there will be only a difference in nomenclature, but net the effect will be the same. The function will be the same. So I'm going to go into the shooting menu. The first one is the shooting menu, bank A, B, C, D, has nothing to do with the image quality. Extended menu banks, keep it on, but it will have nothing that will impact your image quality. Storage folder, file naming, primary slot selection, secondary slot selection, all will not have any impact on your image quality. However, you can be very careful about how you use the secondary slot, that is memory card slot. You can either decide to back up the primary card slot, or you can decide to keep it in overflow mode, which means if your primary card gets full, it will automatically start saving in the secondary card slot. I would seriously recommend you to keep the secondary card in backup mode, not in overflow mode. It means every shot that you take will simultaneously be recorded in both cards. So, cards to be set at backup mode. Then comes the most important one. It is the image quality. Image quality, there are two kinds of shooters. There is a RAW shooter and there are a JPEG shooter. Well, I really don't understand the logic of shooting a JPEG with a $5,000 camera is actually beyond my logic. But I'm sure some people require it, like the journalist and people who needs to immediately send the images out onto a publication for immediate release or share it with the world. Yes, JPEG is useful, but I trust RAW. I'm a big believer of RAW, and I'm sure most of you will agree. So my choice of shooting will be on RAW mode. I don't even shoot a JPEG along with it because I was a commercial photographer. But again, I will address the JPEG shooter separately. Now, image quality RAW. Image area should be the maximum area. Of course, modern digital cameras allow you to crop into your sensor, but what's the big idea? The next important function, very important function that you need to be aware of and careful about is the white balance. We've done two very interesting episodes on white balance. I recommend that you watch them so that they are elaborate. So please watch them and you will find the links in the description. So please take a look at them. Coming down the menu, you will see picture control. The picture control, as the name suggests, lets you control the way each image appears on the screen. If you go into that menu, you will see standard, neutral, vivid, monochrome, portrait, landscape, flat, all representing an image. Each image shot in these picture settings or picture control settings will look different. Now, if you are a RAW shooter, this will not really affect your image permanently. For a JPEG shooter, it's different. You're actually going to burn in that style into your image, leaving you a very little room for play in the post. So I usually leave it at standard. It doesn't really matter. I leave it at standard. Manage picture control. In case if you want to further edit your picture style, then of course you go into the picture control menu and edit it. It is meant for the JPEG shooter, not really for the RAW shooter. Next one is very important again, color space. Okay, there are only two color spaces available in a DSLR, Adobe RGB and an sRGB. They are basically allowing the camera to capture a certain amount of colors in, if I have to speak in a very simple layman's language. We should try as much as possible shoot in the Adobe RGB space. Adobe RGB is a much bigger gamut. It is like unadulterated milk, whereas the sRGB is more like skimmed milk, watered down. It will look like milk, but will have very little quality of the real milk, unadulterated milk itself. So my recommendation is to stay with Adobe RGB, definitely for the JPEG shooter. Let me actually show it to you using a small visual representation. So here I am on this computer, and I'm going to select the color sync utility to illustrate this point across to you. And in the system here, you can see a series of color profiles displayed. Let me pick the Adobe RGB 1998, which I am referring to in this camera. Okay, and move the mouse around. I can show you all corners of this color gamut. What I am going to do is to compare this with the sRGB. Very simple. I need to hold this for comparison, and let me pick the sRGB. Now, can you see how much of information is lost? The one inside here is the sRGB, and outside is your Adobe RGB. What happens when you shoot an image with the color profile set to sRGB is that you will have thrown out all these informations at the shoot stage itself, leaving you with only so much color information to work with. All the JPEG shooters who shoots in sRGB color space will face problems reproducing turquoise, green, yellow, all that. You will reproduce your, this area very well. Yeah, see, you can see even the red, your bright pinks, you will have lost it permanently. And what you do in post, you try to add saturation to bring back the lost colors, which to me is not the right way. However, if you are shooting a RAW and if you are shooting in Adobe RGB, you will have everything. It is like the unadulterated milk. It's so thick and viscous, you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, back to our menu. Active delighting. It's an in-camera processing. Basically controls your highlight area. Okay, the bright spots. It avoids excessive burning or excessive overexposure of your highlight area. So within the camera, the processor understands that it is getting overexposed and it starts pulling it down. It's okay for a JPEG shooter, but let me tell you, it slows down the camera. If you are trying to shoot quick bursts of images, 6, 7, 8 frames a second, all these in camera effects or in-camera processing start slowing down your camera, and you will not really get your optimum speed, which means it will slow you down. Well, if you're a JPEG shooter, make sure that your exposure is correct. At the same breath, I'll discourage you from shooting a JPEG because I shoot RAW. Well, is that a familiar word? I think it's a familiar word for most of us in the YouTube world. Vignette control, auto distortion control, long exposure noise reduction, high ISO noise reduction, all these are in-camera processings. To me, it really slows down the camera again. So, if you're looking for speed, you should deactivate all these. If you are a JPEG fine shooter, again, you will not have too much of a problem depending on the resolution of your camera. But, well, again, my advice is to stick to RAW and shoot JPEG only if it is absolutely necessary. And ISO sensitivity settings. Refer to our video on auto ISO setting for this one. Very interesting. Multiple exposure, interval timing, all movie settings, all this doesn't really matter for a still photographer. Well, the next one is the custom setting menu, in which the camera will allow you to make fine tunings of the focus, exposure, flash settings and various all other controls, timing, bracket, everything. You can make custom setting and save in individual banks, which means you address that particular custom menu setting and you will quickly go into that particular mode. For example, let's say if you're a sports photographer in the evening and in the morning you're going to function in your studio doing some portraits, I'm just giving you a like a hypothetical situation. The sports photographer requires a certain kind of setting, and the portrait photographer requires a different kind of camera setting. You can do the fine tunings in your custom control menu, save it in different banks, and immediately call it for your shoot. So that is fine. And then the next one is the setup menu. Well, format your card, of course. Of course, you need to format your card. Monitor brightness, don't fool around with the monitor brightness and never trust your monitor. I will strongly discourage you from trusting the monitor completely. It's only an indication. Use it to compose it well. Use it to a certain extent, set up your shot and light it up, but don't trust the monitor for exposure. Learn how to read your histogram. Well, we'll do another session on histogram, so that will come up soon. So then monitor color balance, again, don't mess with it. Stay the neutral way. Monitor brightness, set to 0. Don't increase or don't decrease it. Image sensor cleaning, mirror lockup cleaning, image dust off, flicker, all these are functions which will not really affect your camera performance. AF fine-tune and non-CPU lens data are two things that you need to give some attention to. In case if you are using a new camera and your lens is from a previous generation or few generations behind, well, then the camera will find it a little difficult to kind of understand and communicate with the lens. So you will require to feed in the non-CPU lens data. Okay, which means then the camera will keep remembering that lens for its focal length and the aperture. The next one is AF fine-tune. All these cameras and lenses are produced in a very large quantity. It's highly possible that the calibration of the lens and the camera is not optimal every time, which means you will have to do a fine-tuning. Check with all your camera. If your viewfinder shows focus on the nose and the camera focus in the eye or vice versa, then you have to worry about fine-tuning. There are many ways of fine-tuning your lens. Use your eye as the best judge and you can fine-tune it. It's pretty easy, and if you find it difficult, take your camera back to your service station and they will do a very good job and they will not ask any questions about it because that's their job. Well, depending again on the type of work that you're going to do, select your preferred autofocus mode, drive mode, single shot, continuous low, continuous high, whatever. Don't waste. I know of a few wedding photographers, I'm not saying everyone is like this, who shoots group photographs in continuous high mode. Well, some of them even have some of these latest cameras which can shoot about 14, 15 frames in a second, and they go. I mean, I don't think they will have even time to go through all those pictures. All they need is one good group shot. So I would like to discourage you from, of course, unlike the olden days, there is no film that you're burning, but that doesn't mean that you do whatever you feel like. Well, certain amount of discipline. I keep talking about discipline, which is of paramount importance. If you bring that in, you will improve your photography. Another important function that you should be careful about is focus. Of course, you all know that if you half press the trigger, it'll focus. There is also another way of focusing your camera by using a back focus. Well, to shift the focus from your trigger to the back, you will have to obviously go to the menu and use your custom controls to shift that focus function to the rear. If you are someone who are regularly using or regularly used to use the trigger button to focus, then you will require a little time. You will take a little time before you get used to the back button focus. Back button focus is immensely helpful or extremely useful for a wildlife photographer, a wedding photographer, a bird photographer. Well, if you get used to it, let me tell you, it's fantastic. But till you get used to it, you will find you will actually miss a few shots. But it's a really wonderful practice to get used to. So I hope I've not missed anything. Better not. Old age, quite possible. But setting your camera alone is not a guarantee for great pictures. The camera alone has not taken any pictures. The pictures that you've seen, the music that you've heard, the books you've read, and the people you've loved, all will affect the way you take your pictures. I did not say this. Ansel Adams did. Well, we don't have any reasons to doubt Ansel Adams, do we? Well, so pick your camera, do all those menu settings, and of course, don't forget to see a lot of pictures and read a lot of books, listen to tons of music, and love everyone. Bye for now.